Did you know that in 2025, 10 European countries are taking serious action against Filipino immigrants? Mass deportations are happening right now, and some of the countries on this list will shock you. Stay with us as we count down from number 10 to the most aggressive country cracking down on Filipino migrants. You won't believe who's at the top of this list. And before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We worked really hard to bring you this eye-opening information, so please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us keep making more must-watch content like this. Now, let's dive in. Number 10, Germany. For years, Germany has been a top destination for skilled Filipino workers, especially nurses. But in 2025, the country has made immigration laws much stricter, leading to over 900 Filipinos being deported. Many lost their visas for small reasons, missing paperwork, failing language tests, or other minor mistakes. The government calls these new policies integration laws, but critics say they are unfairly targeting immigrants. Filipino nurses, who were once welcomed with open arms to fill Germany's healthcare shortages, are now at risk of deportation even if they have jobs. Hospitals are warning that losing Filipino staff will hurt patient care, but the government refuses to change its decision. Public opinion in Germany is shifting, with more people supporting stricter immigration laws. Filipino workers who once felt safe and secure are now living in fear. Advocacy groups are fighting for amnesty, but Germany is focused on cutting down migration. The country's reputation as a welcoming place for foreign workers is fading fast. Is this the end of Filipino workers in Germany? Number 9, Italy. Italy is known for its rich history, stunning art, and famous cities like Rome and Venice. But in 2025, it has become a nightmare for Filipino immigrants. The Italian government has started mass deportations, forcing thousands of Filipinos to leave the country due to harsh new visa rules. Officials say they want to prioritize jobs for European Union citizens, leaving many Filipinos with no choice but to pack up and leave. In just 6 months, over 1,200 Filipinos have been deported. Most of them worked as domestic helpers, caregivers, and cleaners, building stable lives in Italy for years. But now, with rising unemployment among Italians, the government is cracking down hard on immigrants. Even those who have been in Italy for decades are being forced out. Families are torn apart, and many Filipinos are too scared to go outside, fearing they will be caught and deported. Filipino groups in Italy are protesting, arguing that their hard work helped Italy's economy, especially during the pandemic. But Italy's far-right government is not backing down. So far, the European Union has stayed silent, leaving many Filipinos uncertain about their future. Without legal status, they risk losing everything they have worked for in Italy. Is this fair? What do you think? Number 8, Austria. Austria, known for its stunning cities like Vienna, was once a safe and peaceful home for Filipino workers. But in 2025, everything changed. The government, led by strict right-wing leaders, launched a mass deportation campaign, targeting foreigners who overstayed their visas. The result? Over 700 Filipinos have already been forced to leave. Most of those deported were caregivers who looked after Austria's elderly, a job that many Austrians don't want. Now, with so many Filipino caregivers gone, families are struggling to find help for their aging relatives. Many Austrians are furious, saying the government's decision is hurting its own people. But officials refuse to listen, insisting that locals should take these jobs instead. The Filipino community is fighting back. Protests are growing in Vienna and other cities, with some Austrian politicians calling for exceptions for essential workers. But the government won't budge. With elections coming soon, public pressure might change things, but for now, Filipinos who spent years working hard and building lives in Austria are being sent away with barely any warning. Is this fair? What will happen next? Number 7, Switzerland. Switzerland is famous for its high salaries, clean cities, and breathtaking Alps. But in 2025, it has become a nightmare for Filipino workers. The government has introduced strict new labor rules, giving priority to European workers and pushing out non-Europeans. Because of this, over 800 Filipinos have already been deported. Most of them worked in hotels, cleaning, and childcare. Officials say these rules are meant to protect jobs for Swiss citizens. But Filipinos argue that they do jobs locals don't want. Many had stable lives in Switzerland for years, working hard and sending money back home. Now, even long-time workers are losing their visas. Some have nowhere to go back to in the Philippines, making this even more heartbreaking. Advocacy groups call this unfair and cruel, especially since Switzerland still needs workers. Protests have erupted across Swiss cities, with employers and Filipinos demanding change. But the government refuses to back down. With time running out, thousands of Filipinos in Switzerland face an uncertain and terrifying future. Will they all be forced to leave? Number 6, Sweden. Sweden has always been known as a kind and welcoming country. But in 2025, everything changed. The government started deporting Filipino immigrants in large numbers, cutting work permits for non-European workers. This hit Filipinos hard, especially those working in tech, healthcare, and cleaning jobs. So far, over 600 Filipinos have already been sent home, and many more could be next. What's even worse, many Filipinos followed all the rules, came to Sweden legally, and worked hard only to have their visa renewals denied. The government says they failed to integrate, but critics argue the language tests have become impossibly hard. Families are now being ripped apart. Some parents are deported while their children born in Sweden are left behind. Heartbreaking. Human rights groups are fighting back, filing legal cases, and protests are breaking out across the country. Even Swedish companies are worried because they need these skilled workers. But with anti-immigrant feelings rising, will the government listen? For now, Filipinos in Sweden live in fear, unsure of what will happen next. Will they be the next ones forced to leave? Number 5, Denmark. Denmark is known as the world's happiest country, but in 2025, it has become a place of fear and heartbreak for Filipino immigrants. The government has introduced strict new laws that target immigrant neighborhoods, calling them high-risk areas. As a result, over 1,200 Filipinos have already been forced out, many of them working in restaurants, cleaning services, and caregiving jobs. But here's the most shocking part. Even Filipinos with legal residency are being kicked out if they live in neighborhoods the government says are not integrated. Imagine living in Denmark for years, paying taxes, working hard, following all the rules, only to be told you have weeks to pack up and leave. Danish business owners are furious, saying they depend on Filipino workers to keep things running. But the government refuses to listen, claiming these deportations are needed for social harmony. Meanwhile, protests have exploded in Copenhagen, with both Danes and immigrants demanding justice. Human rights groups and international media are criticizing Denmark's harsh policies, but the government refuses to back down. For Filipinos who once believed Denmark was a safe place to build their future, that dream is turning into a nightmare. And with no sign of these deportations stopping, many are terrified that this could be the new reality for immigrants across Europe. Number 4, Belgium. Belgium, home to the European Union's headquarters, was once a great place for Filipino workers. But in 2025, everything changed. The government started strict new hiring rules, saying Belgian citizens must come first before foreigners. The result? Over 1,000 Filipinos have already been deported. Many of them worked in hotels, restaurants, and office jobs, but even those who spent years working for EU institutions lost their jobs overnight. Can you imagine being a loyal worker for years, only to be suddenly told you're no longer needed? Belgian employers are angry, saying Filipinos are hardworking and reliable, but politics has become more important than skill. Families are being torn apart, with children forced to leave school in the middle of the year. Legal battles have started, but the government refuses to back down. And with far-right political parties gaining power, things are getting even worse for Filipinos. More deportations could be coming, leaving thousands with no job security and nowhere to go. Protests have erupted in Brussels. Filipino workers and their supporters are demanding justice, but so far, no changes have been made. Some Belgian politicians are finally speaking up, But will that be enough? For Filipinos who spent years building a life in Belgium, the future is full of fear and uncertainty. Number 3, Norway. Norway is known for its amazing quality of life. But in 2025, everything changed. The government brought in strict new immigration rules, focusing only on highly skilled workers. This left many Filipinos jobless, especially those working in fishing and domestic work. The result? Over 500 Filipinos have already been deported, and the numbers keep rising. For years, Filipinos worked in Norway's fishing industry, doing the hard, dirty jobs that many locals didn't want. But now, even with worker shortages, they are being forced to leave. Some have even been locked up in detention centers for months before being sent home. Can you imagine working hard for years and then suddenly being treated like a criminal? Norwegians are split on this issue. Some say the policy is good for Norwegian wages, while others argue it's cruel and unfair to those who helped build the economy. Protests are growing in Oslo and other cities, and legal battles are heating up. With elections coming soon, this could turn into a huge political fight. Will Norway change its policy? Or will even more Filipinos lose their jobs and be sent away? The future is uncertain. Number 2, France. France, the land of liberty, equality, and fraternity, has taken a harsh and heartbreaking turn against Filipino immigrants in 2025. Under President Le Pen's strict new laws, the government has enforced a French-first hiring policy, leading to the deportation of over 2,000 Filipinos. Many of these hardworking Filipinos were nannies, caregivers, and domestic workers, the very people who helped raise French children and care for elderly citizens for years or even decades. But now, they are being kicked out with almost no warning. Wealthy families who once depended on their Filipino caregivers are struggling to find replacements. Children are crying, begging their beloved nannies not to leave, but the government won't listen. Officials defend the policy, calling it economic patriotism, but critics say it is cold and heartless. The streets of Paris are now filled with protests as French labor unions stand side by side with Filipino workers, demanding justice. Meanwhile, Le Pen's supporters cheer for the deportations, while opposition leader Macron strongly condemns them. With anti-immigrant feelings growing, France's long-standing reputation as a multicultural and welcoming country is fading fast. For Filipinos who once believed in the French dream, that dream is now over. Is this the new reality for immigrants across Europe? Or will public pressure force a change? Number 1, United Kingdom. In 2025, the UK has earned the shameful title of the worst country in Europe for deporting Filipinos. Under Prime Minister Farage's harsh Britain First policy, more than 5,000 Filipinos have already been removed, more than any other country. Nurses, construction workers, and even students are being forced out, despite many having lived in the UK for years. The most heartbreaking part? During the COVID-19 pandemic, the UK begged Filipino healthcare workers to save its collapsing NHS. They risked their lives to help, and now they are being thrown away like trash. Hospitals are desperate for staff, but the government refuses to stop the deportations, saying British jobs should go to British workers. Even families with UK-born children are being torn apart. Parents are kicked out, while their children are left behind in the UK. The world is watching in horror, with human rights groups and world leaders condemning Britain's cruelty. But Farage refuses to back down, promising even more deportations. For Filipinos who once believed in the UK's values of fairness and justice, this is the ultimate betrayal. Britain's diverse society is crumbling, and now no immigrant is safe. Did this shock you? Let us know in the comments. Smash that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more uncensored updates. Stay aware, stay strong,